Foreclosures create stress, shame, and avoidance. It's understandable. The unopened mail, the missed calls, those things only shrink your choices though. I've been in that position before where I foreclosed on a home. It was back in 2006 or 7 or somewhere in that area. See, I don't even like to remember the date that it happened because it was a horrible experience. But I know what it feels like, to go through that stress. And, hopefully I can provide some information that can help guide you through this time where foreclosure may be looming above your head. You may be able to avoid it. You may be able to get out of it. You do have resources that you can lean on. The first missed payment, and that's not the time to disappear, but really that is the time to think about building your team. You missed that first payment, you got to start taking action. You don't want it to be avoidance. What foreclosure is when the lender or the trustee uses the legal process tied to the loan on that property to recover unpaid debt in California. And most residential foreclosures are non-judicial. So a missed payment does not mean the home is sold tomorrow, but it does mean fees, deadlines, and obviously, the risk of losing your home builds very quickly. So it starts with payment trouble, servicer outreach. That will lead to notice of default, notice of trustee sale to the auction. So thus, in general, how those things kind of take place. But it's not a quick process, but that's how the process flows. A servicer generally must try to make contact with the borrower at least 30 days before recording the notice of default. So that gives you some time there. And their purpose is to disclose or to discuss foreclosure alternatives. So they don't want to go into foreclosure just like you don't want to go into foreclosure. So there's opportunity to save your situation, even if it doesn't feel like it. Foreclosure as a process is just not one single event, and each stage changes the leverage that you have as a homeowner. So you have to be aware of what those things are. So there's a timeline that you want to consider when foreclosure may be looming, and one is to call your servicer's loss mitigation department and ask what is required of you to potentially make an application to help mitigate that foreclosure. Make sure that you're documenting every time you contact your servicer or your lender. Know who the person is, document who you're speaking with, the name, the date. If there's any confirmation numbers given to you, make sure you record those things and keep a log. It's important that you track all that information. You don't want to lose track of that. The notice of default is really a formal escalation of the foreclosure process. And, that tells you that, yes, they're getting ready to foreclose on your home. And you need to seek qualified help immediately if you get a notice of default. So at this point, you got to make sure that you're reaching out. You don't hide from the situation. The notice of trustee sale means that now you're in go time. They plan on selling your home. So the urgency is high. You need to know the sale date. But it's important that you contact HUD, the Housing Urban Development Department. That's the U.S. Housing Urban and Development Department. And you want to speak to a certified counselor that can help guide you through this process. They're going to be able to find resources for you that obviously I'm not qualified to provide you with, but they're going to be able to help you navigate this process. And you need that on your side. And potentially you may want to get an attorney along with them, or as well as someone from HUD to review what's going on with their situation. So deadlines and protections depend on your loan, the servicer, your property, the occupancy, the filings, and the current law in your area. So that's why you have to be in touch with that HUD counselor and that attorney. It's important. So you want to really stay on top of those matters. You don't want to let that unravel so quickly that you're being forced to move out of your house when you haven't had proper representation and you don't understand everything that's going on. I kind of got myself in that situation where, I ignored the calls, and I ignored the mail. I didn't want to open it up. And then next thing you know, I was being forced to move out. It's a horrible situation. I don't want you to go through that. That's for sure. There's other ways to get out of this. If you received a notice of default, your next move, it's not guessing, it's getting a date and the facts straight. This way you can take the next steps appropriately and with purpose. Every minute counts after this. So after that, you really need to decide, what the goal is for you. And it can mean different things for everybody. Everyone's situation is different. So you want to decide, is this home a home that you want to keep? So there's potentially ways to keep that home, even when you begin the foreclosure process. So you can ask your server about reinstatement, a repayment plan, potential forbearance, a loan modification, and in limited cases, maybe even opportunity to refinance. Now there's, certain variables that go along with that, but, availability and eligibility depends on your individual situation, but those are options that can be open to you, which can help you keep your home. Or maybe it's more beneficial for you to sell your home, and one of the big questions is there enough time and equity to make the sale? The market sale may pay liens, selling costs, and you still may be able to preserve some of the equity. But in order to do that, you have to start with a realistic net sheet and understand really what the cost is. Not just the price, not just the loan balance, but there's other things that you have to consider. You have to look at the title, you have to look at the condition assessment, you have to look at the timeline. So there are factors that go beyond just looking at those numbers, right? You have to get really into the depths of it. There's the potential short sale. Now, a short sale is certainly out of my scope, but that happens when the anticipated proceeds from the sale of your home will not cover the full cost of your home, which may mean, certain potential taxes, junior liens, and other timing things that really require, your attorney and CPA to help you determine that. But it is a pathway. I purchased a home in a short sale, so I've kind of had an experience from the buyer side, but it's a little different when you experience a short sale when you are leaving your home. So it's important that you have appropriate representation. You need legal advice that I can't provide for that, but that's an option that you can look at. There's other exits for you that include a deed in lieu, the bankruptcy may be able to protect you for a while. And there are other legal strategies that require your lender and legal advice. It's out of my scope, but there are other options as well you need to be aware of. So the important thing here is to understand, what is your goal? What do you intend to do? What do you want to do? There's different pathways out of that. The time. Now the clock is ticking because you're not going to be able to stay in that house forever. It's foreclosing. You got to make decisions. What does your equity look like? You got to have a realistic view of what the equity is on your property, and affordability, whether that's something you can do where maybe you can actually end up with money rather than a foreclosure, which would be amazing, right? And you have to understand the loan and occupancy facts on that property. There's no one way. It all depends on everyone's own situation, but you have to start by talking to somebody, and HUD, your attorney, possibly a realtor. Those are all options for you, right? So, before choosing the option that works best for you, you got to answer that one question. Are we trying to keep the home or protect the best possible exit? It's important. I can help you with that. So this is where really a realtor adds value to those decisions, because one, you want to define equity very carefully, right? Like I said before, it's not just simple math. It's a little more complex. What is the estimated market value minus mortgage balances, minus liens, selling costs, other payoff items that you may not have considered. So there's not just one simple line item that you're minusing from, a potential sales price. It's a little more complex. What we can look at is your comp, and the comp comparable market analysis, what is happening in your neighborhood, figuring out what the price strategy would be to sell your home, and then what you would really net if you sold that home. And that depends obviously on the property condition, the title, whether you have clean title, escrow coordination, and the realistic marketing to closing timeline. So we have to understand what that is, especially when there's a foreclosure in place. My role is to really put real numbers and a workable sale timeline in front of you, so you're not guessing, you're dealing with facts rather than pressure, although the pressure will still be there. So you have to understand that equity is not the Zestimate minus the mortgage. I think anyone who owns a home kind of makes that mistake, even from your own lender who sent you what the potential worth of your home is. That's not sufficient. You really have to understand what the market is in your area. So think about that. But here is the first 48-hour action plan for you. And one is to open and sort every mortgage, trustee, court, tax, HOA, or insurance notice. Get them out in the open, understand what that mail is, take a look at it, email or mail. Now everyone's electronic, but you got to understand what you're dealing with out there and who's asking for what. Call the servicer. Who's your lender? Using the number on that official statement, request loss mitigation, and get a single point of contact if you can, because that will be helpful. This way you're not talking to someone else every time you call into that lender, because you're going to talk to that lender more than once. Your action item number 3 is write down what your hardship is. You have to understand your income, your expenses, the loan details, the notice dates, and your desired outcome, what you really want to get out of this, because we have to understand what that is. Your action item number 4 is, make sure that you contact your HUD approved housing counselor. And that's important. If there's a sale date, a lawsuit, bankruptcy, probate, divorce, tenant, tax, or title issues, you got to have the right people in place, and that includes contacting your HUD certified counselor, a CPA, an attorney possibly. So those are important to have those lined up. Action item number 5 is, get a real equity and sale timeline review from a licensed local real estate professional. I'm here for you. Even if I'm not your professional, I'm here to help you out. If you have questions, let me know. Let's do some digging. Let's get you out of this situation you're in and get you into something positive. And those are the 5 things that you need to do in the first 48 hours. Call, document, counsel, value. Those are important. Now, here's something that's also important, is understanding scams and pressure tactics. You have to understand the red flags when people are contacting you. The upfront fees for guaranteed relief, there's a big red flag right there. If someone instructs you to stop talking to your lender or your servicer, request for you to sign over your title, or pressure to act right now without independent review from somewhere else with promises to erase your mortgage, those are red flags. Don't do that. Make sure you're talking to the right people. Verification, that's the important thing. Make sure you are verifying who you are speaking to and that what they're saying is legitimate. Don't put yourself in a bad position. You're already in a stressful position. You don't want to have to deal with the scammer and have to try to deal with that. That is no bueno. If someone guarantees they can stop foreclosure for an upfront fee, slow down, verify everything. That's important. So you are not powerless, right? But time matters. Time is of the essence. Choose the goal that is right for you. That's important, right? What is going to be your goal? Stay in a home, sell the home, or maybe another pathway, right? We've talked about those, but you have to do what's right for you. I'm here to help you make that decision. I'm not here to try to get business. I'm here to help you. So what I've experienced when I foreclosed, I wish someone had told me this, because rather than avoidance, I would have taken action, and possibly I could have refinanced, or potentially I could have had my loan restructured. You know, they did it a lot back then, and that was during the housing bubble. Instead, I lost my home, had that on my credit for a long period of time, and had to deal with the ramifications of that. And, you know, that meant higher interest rates for credit cards as I built my credit back up, and vehicle loans and all those things. So it's important. It was a lesson that I learned the hard way. Let's try to avoid that for you. So if you live in a home in Lodi or Stockton or Galt or Elk Grove or Manteca or any of these surrounding areas or in the East Bay, I mean, reach out, call me, 510-506-3800, or use the link below to reach me, and let's have a conversation right now. Let's get on it. Let's help you take care of your situation. Subscribe, share with someone who may be avoiding that conversation. Mention that the description, you know, for what's going on right now includes advising you to speak with a HUD counselor, a certified counselor, pointing in the right direction of attorneys if you need one, ensuring that you have the consumer protection resources that you need. But I'm here to help you with that. I'm Jesse Rivas Realty, part of Keller Williams. I hope that I can help you out. Have a great night.